So today I'll be headed to a citywide block club meeting that the city of Detroit is hosting at the Northwest Activity Center on Detroit's west side. And I'm a big fan of block clubs because of the closeness they are with what's happening, obviously, within their neighborhoods, within their communities, on their block, right? They actually see a lot more than what you typically can imagine from what is reported on the news or any metrics or data that any city potentially provides its citizens. And usually block clubs make sure the city stays honest with regard to what they need to provide the citizens of that community on a consistent basis, what they need to provide those taxpayers on a consistent basis and effective basis, on top of security and rubbish removal. Block clubs are really what make up a majority of the outreach in the neighborhood, because these are the individuals that will allow for me to be able to hear and learn things such as what they don't want to see developed within their community, what they need, what they would like to see in terms of reactivation from a retail/commercial side. And these are the individuals that usually respond to my outreach activities instantly. Whenever you reach out to somebody, a block club captain, they usually are the ones that say, hey, look, I'd love to talk to you about that project or that property because it's been an eyesore for many years. We know the previous owners and they had some concepts and thoughts that they weren't able to execute. But now here you are as a developer with a vision that is wanting to redevelop this site. Let's sit down with you and see if there's an opportunity for us to collectively work together and figure out how to reactivate this site in one format or another. And in a lot of cases, the block club captains and residents in general typically are a bit standoffish when it comes to a random developer reaching out to them saying, hey, look, I got this grand idea. I would like to come into your community, redevelop a property that you've been familiar with for X amount of years into something potentially completely different than what its previous and past uses have been, possibly disrupting the community in one format or another for good or bad. And that's understandable. It is understandable for communities and for the neighborhoods that live within these areas to have a bit of a level of disbelief and guard in order to make sure that they're not being sold a lie, which happens more often than I realize. I come across a lot of projects and developers that have grand ideas, and it's not in most cases their fault, but they have these grand ideas that will take this property from 0 to 1,000 in the matter of a year, and they're imagining brew houses, apartments, and food truck pads, and EV charging stations, things of that nature. And they have an idea of what it's going to cost, but in reality, the number that they have is a lot lower than what it actually will cost. And more importantly, the community that they're wanting to build within may not even like the idea that they've come up with and spent all of this time, energy, effort selling the funding part one, and not spending enough time engaging with the community and figuring out what they want, which in a lot of cases may not be the same thing that this new developer that once again may not even be from the community comes to the table with, potentially disrupting the neighborhood's overall fabric in a number of ways. So really understandable why communities have their guards up when it comes to developers pitching certain ideas. But in order to help bring that guard down, you reach out to your block club captains and you say, hey, look, let's go grab a cup of coffee. Let's grab a cup of coffee in the neighborhood that you live in at a coffee shop that you frequent, which more or less is probably going to be owned by somebody from the neighborhood and or somebody the neighborhood likes. And so therefore supporting that small business adds to the value of you and the block club captains meeting together. And they don't have to be block club captains. They could just be members from the community. And buy them a cup of coffee. What's $5? What's $6 going to do to your budget negatively? Nothing, right? You sit down, you have a conversation, and you don't talk at these individuals. You let them talk to you, and you listen. That is what separates a good developer from a great one. Making sure you sit down, you listen to the needs of the community, you take that in mind, and before you even propose anything, you've already had input from the community, and you format and formulate your vision and your proposal around what the community is asking for, not what you want. That is rule number one when it comes to being an impact developer, at least with regard to my experience here in the city of Detroit. But I want to go to this block club event because, once again, I am a huge fan of how they help mobilize the community in a grassroots manner. And I think that block clubs don't get enough credit. I really don't think block clubs get enough credit due to the fact power behind them that could potentially disrupt a development in a negative way. For an example, you don't have a conversation with the community, the block club or the neighborhood association isn't happy. Your project has to go in front of city council for a possible tax abatement, or you may need to get it rezoned for one reason or another. Imagine showing up to your city council meeting, but then you look up and you have your block, have all of the residents and or a handful of the residents that live within that community that you're developing within show up and negatively call out how your project is going to disrupt community, their way of life, and they are opposed to this project moving forward. All because you potentially missed out on the opportunity of having that conversation with the community early on in the process. And no matter what you present to them now, they're going to feel away. They're not going to trust you. And they're going to still, in some capacity, slow you up. Even if you align with the community down the line, there could be a scenario where they slow you up because of the fact that you initially didn't have that conversation. They show up to the city council meetings. They negatively talk about you in the press or on social media. That happens. And so as a developer, you're a public figure. And this is something that I didn't realize is the case until a tenant of mine mentioned that to me. A tenant of mine came up to me and said, hey, look, since you're a public figure now, I'm like, wow, wait a minute, public figure. But it's true. When you're a developer, you are laying it all on the line. You are presenting a proposal to the public, and you are allowing that public in one format or another to judge you, your firm, the ability of your team to be able to execute on the vision, and so on and so forth. So really understand, to my aspiring developers, you have to really understand that when you're putting yourself in a position to want to develop a site, you are a public figure. And so therefore you have to do your best at appeasing to your customer base, not your funding partners, which in a way they're more specifically partners than anything. So reiterating the word partnership with your banks and your funding institutions, but you have to truly appease to the neighborhood, to the community, to the people who live, walk, bike that commercial corridor or street that you're developing this property on. Otherwise, you run into a scenario where, as a public figure, you're going to get called out for any inconsistency that you may bring to the table, or anything that you did not do in order to or for the betterment of the community, which, enough as it sounds, is to sit down and listen to the community, to listen, engage, and formulate your vision around what the community needs. Once again, not what you want. Now, there is a bit of a balance, because what the community needs and is asking for may not necessarily pencil out when it comes to putting together your pro forma, and that's a whole nother conversation. The short and sweet of that is there are ways that you can incorporate community feedback, as well as incorporate concepts and parse together the overall project in a way that allows for you to meet your need of covering a certain debt service down the line, which is obviously very, very important when it comes to putting together your financial projections to in turn show to your funding partners and convince them to give you money to build this facility within the community that is demanding a certain product, a certain quality of product. I would love to figure out a way to be of service to current block clubs and expand the number of block clubs within the city of Detroit in one format or another. I'm not exactly sure how that would look with regard to me being of service. I have a few ideas that I'm not ready to share with you as of yet about, but I am really trying to figure out how I can be of service to block clubs. With that said, I'm going to this block club meeting to better understand how I can not only be of service to current block clubs, but how is it possible for me to spur more block clubs across the city in order for us as developers to be able to better connect to the communities that we serve. And so therefore I can't turn down an opportunity to attend this event.
Thank you all for the departments that came. We have city walls here. We have sustainability. We have our Don resource table in the back. DWSD, Bringing Up Detroit, Premier Group, the Health Department, Clean Slate, and GSD. So we have all of those departments that have come out and have resources for you. So I'd like to thank them for coming out and giving you that information.